TLDR. Is she 28F really the one, or am I 27M, just afraid of commitment? I have been with my partner for 9 years now. We met during university and have been together ever since. We are each other's only relationships. We have been cohabiting for about 5 years, and until recently, things had always been good. We consistently discussed having a long-term future together, and everything seemed to revolve around the idea of forever. Getting engaged was probably likely in the next 12 months or so. Sometime last year, I had a sort of epiphany moment where we reevaluated our 5-year plan, and I felt really excited as it meant having children a couple of years later than we had always stated, and that we would do more traveling and enjoying life in the meantime. It struck me just how excited and relieved this realization made me, and after a week of contemplating this, it sort of sent me into a downward spiral. If I truly did not want children sooner, why did I not communicate this? Over the course of another month or two, I became increasingly withdrawn and depressed. I had not necessarily identified this moment as the trigger yet, and changed a few aspects of my life to combat this period. I switched companies. The time had sort of come anyway. Took more time for self-care, and rejoined a sports team after being away for several years. I also attended therapy for a number of weeks to discuss this, where I identified this conversation as likely the trigger point for my down period. I talked extensively about our relationship in therapy, and I think I sort of verbally acknowledged many things I had been subconsciously aware of for several years, but never actually mentioned to anyone or sat down and truly contemplated. I remarked that I always made her happier than she made me. Making her happy had always brought me joy, and this had consistently fulfilled me, but I was now questioning whether this would be enough for the next 50 years. I have a natural ability to make her laugh, as I understand her and her humor exceptionally well, which comes easily to me, whereas this is not the case for her, and I would never laugh much with her, certainly not compared to my friends. This has always made her feel a bit down, and she has mentioned feeling somewhat envious of this, but I always dismissed this as unimportant, believing that our love for each other and being present for each other is much more significant than laughter. Our sexual life had always been infrequent, never exceeding once a month, which always disappointed me. However, I justified this to myself by saying that we wouldn't really be having sex in our 80s, so why was I acting as if it was important when it wouldn't last forever anyway? I had discussed more minor issues with my therapist, which generally involved her challenging my relationship and me defending my partner. But when I shared that I had spent several years periodically asking my partner if we could work on improving our sexual life, to which she always agreed but never acted upon, my therapist simply asked me what that indicated about her. This completely shocked me, and I just sat there in silence as it sank in that it seemed she never truly cared that this bothered me and impacted our relationship, and essentially was quite content not to change anything, as that was what she could get away with. The therapist recommended attending couples therapy, and I said I would consider it. Following this epiphany, I truly noticed myself withdrawing from the relationship significantly and finding the most minor issues highly irritable. There was one friend to whom I confided much of this. We discussed it for a while, and at the end, he made a passing comment that one day you wake up and your mind is fully developed. This has stayed with me, was I never truly happy but lacked the ability to recognize this. My partner is a wonderful person. She is incredibly kind and loving to me. She is a truly beautiful individual, and I love her more than anyone else in the world. She has been there for me through thick and thin, supporting me through many low points in my life as I have wrestled with my mental health for numerous years. We have incredible memories together. She is my best friend, and there isn't anything in the world that I don't share with her. We hold very similar long-term views on having children and our priorities in life, and her family is so warm and loving, treating me incredibly well. We began attending couples therapy after I suggested it, and things did improve slightly, including our physical intimacy. We've made an effort to spend better quality time together, as well as improving our time apart, and things have gotten better. I'm just not entirely certain they are good enough. Whenever I talk about silly little things like wonderful quotes or anecdotes that bring me immense joy, she might smile and respond. But I consistently feel she never truly comprehends me, that she is not as deep as I am or does not perceive the world the way I do. I also worry that the improvements in our sexual life are something that will diminish in the medium to long term if we navigate through this and commit our lives together, but in her defense, there isn't exactly much more she could be doing right now to prove otherwise. Ultimately, I am questioning whether I simply have a fear of commitment or if my gut feeling of uncertainty is worth listening to. My parents are divorced after many years of resentment building up between them, and I do not want to end up in the same situation. In my mind, we make perfect sense for each other, and we possess the ability to live a long and happy life together. This is all a significant struggle between my mind and my gut feeling, and I can't quite determine what is right. All I know for certain is that I do not feel as happy as I did a year ago and in all the years prior. I would hate to find myself standing at the altar in a couple of years thinking I should have walked away while I had the chance, but equally, I think of all the wonderful moments and the genuine, truly unconditional love that we share, and it would be madness to throw it all away just because I became a bit dizzy contemplating forever. Has anyone experienced something similar, and can anyone offer any advice? Story 2. 35F with 37M with 3-year dead bedroom in 31/2-year-long relationship, questions/advice. What is the best course of action in my predicament? How we met: I am a 35-year-old female and have been with my boyfriend, who is 37 years old, for approximately 3.5 years. We met at work and initially took many breaks together because he would smoke while I vaped in the parking lot. We spent months engaging in hours of conversation every day. It was wonderful. We discovered that we had numerous shared interests, including PC gaming, societal issues, and religious beliefs. I was then invited to a gathering at another coworker's residence, which is located in the same apartment building as my boyfriend now. It turned out that he had a girlfriend of nearly 9 years. I decided to step back and offered to remain friends. Since I had just exited a toxic relationship with a narcissist a few months earlier, I was fine with taking a step back and joined Bumble. We continued to take breaks together as friends, and I casually mentioned how I received over 200 responses on Bumble overnight, which was quite overwhelming. 2 days later, he was single. Yes, I felt guilty. We agreed to remain friends for a while before making any commitments, as it would seem too hasty and would not look good. The relationship, despite our efforts to take things slowly, we still progressed quite rapidly. I was very focused on him, constantly making breakfasts, lunches for work, and dinners. We officially moved in together a year after we began dating. However, I came to realize that I was the one initiating all the intimacy and was also doing the majority of the work involved. I was cooking and genuinely making an effort to be a good girlfriend, but this seemed to resemble love bombing, despite acts of service being my preferred means of expressing love, stemming from my instability in childhood. The issue: 6 months into the relationship, even before we moved in together, I noticed that I was bearing a disproportionate share of the emotional labor and initiating intimacy. I told him that the responsibility was his and expressed my desire for him to initiate the next step so we could achieve a more equitable balance, as I felt he wasn't really invested since he never attempted to engage. He agreed to work on this and assured me he wanted to improve. We accepted this and moved forward. After a few more months, I raised the topic again, which is challenging for me since I've never had the freedom to express negative emotions, but I trust him enough to work on my communication skills. Unfortunately, he remained silent. Over the last 3 years, nothing has changed. I must ask him for hugs, and it took me a year to train him to give me a goodnight kiss daily. He still accepts my displays of affection: hugs, kisses, and comfort, but does not initiate any of these gestures. We get along well as best friends and continue our daily conversations for hours, with him dominating the dialogue. There have been occasions when we are drinking and I muster the courage to bring up the issue, again, only to be met with silence each time. The constant crying has become unbearable. The feelings of rejection have severely impacted my self-esteem. I cannot discuss this with my friends because I have a hunch about their likely responses, which I am not prepared to hear. My depression has worsened considerably. The present: a few days ago, I started a sober discussion about the issue, again, and sat in silence with him until he provided a genuine response. We sat for nearly 20 minutes, with me practically vibrating with emotion. He revealed that he prefers masturbation to sex, as it requires less effort. While I have no problem with this under normal circumstances, if it leads to a disconnection in our relationship, it must be addressed. I then asked if he understood how much the lack of intimacy was affecting me, and he acknowledged it. I asked him if he chose masturbation over nurturing our relationship, which he denied. I conveyed my desire for a relationship characterized by mutual intimacy, stating I could not accept anything less. I want to give him every opportunity possible. I care for him deeply, and he is otherwise a wonderful person. I inquired about a reasonable timeline for implementing these changes should he decide to make them, and he suggested 1 month. This is convenient as it coincides with our lease renewal. I didn't mention this to him, just something I noticed. I pointed out that February is the shortest month, asking if he was certain, to which he affirmed. I wanted the timeline to be his decision, as that felt most equitable. The following day, he fell ill and has predominantly been in bed since then. I am hesitant to think I might have caused him stress that led to his illness, but I believe it was essential to advocate for my needs and seek clarity moving forward, regardless of the outcome. Now I am waiting to see how he will respond. I need to know 1, how I should conduct myself during this interim period, 2, how likely it is that we can resolve this situation, and 3, other options I might consider. I do not have all the answers, and I am open to discovering additional ways to address this matter. Since he has been unwell, I have had nothing to gauge against the baseline, which adds another layer of complexity. I am simply hoping that he will rise to the occasion because otherwise, my heart will be shattered. I was planning to take a class this semester to fulfill one of my graduate certificate requirements, but withdrew before it started, as I intended to pay in cash, and now I am uncertain if I will need that money for a new apartment and related expenses. Further background information for those interested: me 35, no children, never married, ENFJ 2W3, Taurus Sun, Aries Moon, Aries Rising. Him 37, no children, never married, ISTJ 9W1, Capricorn Sun, adopted, so his full astrological chart is unknown. Please ask if you require more details, thank you. Story 3. I'm actually going to lose my shit on my stepdad. Sorry it's long. So I am 16, and perhaps I am simply an overly emotional teenager. However, my stepfather truly frustrates me. Let me start with today. I have not attended school for the past 3 days, and today was an unintentional mistake because I dreamed of going to school and only woke up around 12 p.m. Therefore, I understand him speaking to me about that, telling me I need to attend school and all of that. While I acknowledge his concerns, it was actually a mistake today. So I informed him that I overslept, and I even found it somewhat amusing that I had dreamt about going to school. But then he became very angry, insisting that my excuse was meaningless and that he expected me to be more inventive today. To me, that felt somewhat patronizing, considering he sleeps until noon every single day. I recognize that he works from home, occasionally involved in online meetings, yet most of the time he is reviewing articles and similar tasks. I pointed out that if he can oversleep, why is it unreasonable for me to do the same? He continued to criticize me, claiming that I just sit in my room doing nothing, and that I cannot draw comparisons because I do not have anything to do beyond attend school, while he is occupied with articles that tire his brain and maintains a schedule that I do not. Then he asked me if that made sense, or if I was merely going to keep nodding with that annoying tight grin. I explained that I was simply picking at my lips because it is a habit, but he began to imitate me mockingly, treating me as if I am unintelligent. I do also pick at my lips when I am trying to avoid responding disrespectfully. I used to argue back frequently, but when I realized it was pointless, I stopped. Now, I focus on not responding in ways that they would interpret as disrespectful. So I end up picking at my lips. I chose to wait for him to finish and walked into the kitchen because I was hungry. I went in to grab the leftovers from dinner, which was spaghetti, and since we have the meatballs separately, I asked him where they were, and he replied that he did not know. Then he started again, entering the kitchen as if I were doing something reckless and stupid, saying, "Are you seriously about to eat dinner?" I simply replied that I was hungry. He suggested that I eat something else like a cereal bar or an apple. I told him I wanted a meal, not a sweet snack, and then he began ranting about how nothing was stopping me from cooking an egg. He gets angry when I use the eggs because he enjoys eating many of them, or making a sandwich, claiming that we were just so incredibly lazy, and that no one has a full meal in the middle of the day. Mind you, I had not eaten anything at all. I just looked at him, trying to refrain from responding disrespectfully again. He told me I should not consume all the dinner during the day so that I would have some left for tonight, because my mother would probably not be preparing dinner often. I simply stated that I would not eat a lot because I typically have a small appetite. He insisted that was not the point. I thought that if he did not want to eat too much of the food, why did he not just prepare his own dinner so he could eat as much as he wanted? My mother works full-time every day from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and he is always home. He tells me this is the sort of behavior that will disrupt my sleep schedule, and then he returned to the living room while I chose not to eat anything. That is merely from today. It seems like he constantly wants to argue with me, and now that I do not respond back, he keeps coming after me, and when I finally do respond, I am being disrespectful. What annoys me every time is when he has negative comments about my mother. I recall another instance when I was preparing dinner. He entered and told me to taste it even though it was already finished. I merely said, "Well, it's already done," and then he snatched a spoon from the drawer to taste some and aggressively stated, "You and your mother are always so afraid to try your own food." I just have sensitive teeth, so it hurts when I eat something that is particularly hot or cold. On another occasion, I became ill and missed a week of school because I went to my nephew's very first birthday party. I was supposed to be grounded that weekend, but my mother made an exception because I was insistent that I could not miss his birthday. When my stepfather found out I had attended, he yelled at both of us in the living room. I did make an effort to respond as politely as I could, as they constantly emphasize that my tone matters. After he finished, I spoke as calmly as possible when I said, "I understand that, but I do not appreciate you yelling at my mother." He became extremely agitated and began shouting again, claiming that I was being disrespectful, saying he could not speak in his own house, and that my mother understood why he was yelling at her. My mother then instructed me to stop talking, which she often does because every time I do anything, my stepfather berates her once he is finished yelling at me. I am being serious when I say I feel like I am going to lose my composure. All he does is pick fights with me and then becomes angry when I react. I cannot do anything without him becoming frustrated with my actions. I have been making a significant effort to manage my emotions better since I have always struggled with controlling my anger, and I truly try not to respond. However, he makes it incredibly challenging. I feel at a complete loss, but if I lose control, my mother will have to deal with the consequences. I just wish I could escape for a while and have some distance from him.